just love looking at two different versions of the same story side by side and ripping them apart. Today I'm geeking out over The Hobbit, and there is so much to geek out over. I realize I'm wearing the shirt of a different fandom, but I figure you guys won't lynch me for it. After all, we all belong to dozens of fandoms. Share the love! Okay, what I'm going to do is share my thoughts chronologically as the movie unfolded. So, we find ourselves at the beginning. Oh, the beginning! This was the perfect way to do The Hobbit, by combining it right in with Lord of the Rings. When I saw Frodo and realized that There and Back Again was all being written down by Bilbo while waiting for the party, perfection! It brought back every good memory and tearful moment of Lord of the Rings. It reminded me just what I was getting into and why I love it all so much. The merging of these two stories is beautiful, brilliant, and pure elegance in its simplicity. Peter Jackson, you mad genius, you. I am a little disappointed because we probably won't see Balin coming for a visit at the conclusion like in the book. I loved this ending because I love seeing the characters reunited again years and years after the adventure. But who knows? Maybe that sneaky old dwarf is hiding under Gandalf's fireworks. Maybe he and two other dwarves are already lodging at Bag End, somehow unbeknownst to Frodo, and they'll slink off together during the long-expected party, marching off to Rivendell softly singing "The Road Goes Ever On and On," and cue credit roll. Is that the pie maker? I fervently hoped they would include Blunt the Knives because it's one of my favorite Tolkien poems, but I didn't really expect it. Mostly because I wanted it so badly. Remember the inn? The merry old inn beneath the old grey hill? Where there they brewed a beer so brown that the man in the moon himself came down one night to drink his fill? Yeah, that's because it wasn't in the Fellowship movie. When the dwarves started pounding a tune after dinner, I was so ecstatic, I think I actually cheered in the theater. So, if you were sitting next to me, yeah, I'm not gonna apologize for that. I think my absolute favorite part of seeing this book turned into a movie series is that you really get to know the dwarves better. You have to admit, in the book they didn't have a whole lot of personality. But now Beaufort has his funny little hat, and Dwalin is the best of half a dozen different action heroes all in one convenient mini package, and Feely and Keely... Curse you, Jackson Heartwrencher, for making us so emotionally invested in the dwarves. Now they have these adorable, lovable personalities, and every time they do something awesome, all I can think about is their demise and how I'll be bawling my eyes out during the last movie. You made Feely and Keely the new Merry and Pippin, and they're awesome, and I love them, and you were probably cackling maniacally while you did it. Let's see. How could we rend some fan hearts apart? Ooh, I know! The pure evil of it! How could you? And Thorin Oakenshield was never one of my favorite characters in the book because he was too haughty and full of himself. But I read the Silmarillion to prepare for the movie, and I discovered that the dwarves are actually proud and stubborn by nature. Realizing this, I was able to see Thorin in a different light, especially with how wonderfully he was portrayed in the film, not just by the amazing Richard Armitage, but also because of the movie itself, delving into Thorin's backstory, and especially with the way that Balin relates it to Bilbo and the other dwarves. With that, Thorin Oakenshield was no longer stuffy and too big for his britches. Instead, he became a noble and honorable prince just struggling to do the best for his people. He is such an awesome character to me now, even when he's giving Bilbo a hard time. Then at the end, when he tells Bilbo he's wrong and he hugs him, I start tearing up because my mind has jumped straight to the Arkenstone and how Thorin, dies. I think Peter Jackson has intentionally made those three so incredibly awesome, and in the cases of Feely and Keely, adorable and hilarious just because we all know they are going to die. Really, I pity those poor people who haven't read the book yet and don't know what's coming. Like me when I first watched The Fellowship. I am ashamed to admit that I had not finished the book before I watched the movie. Boromir's death kind of hit me hard. A completely evil thought has just entered my mind. It will be actually kind of funny in the last movie if there are some clueless fans freaking out over their deaths. After all, by now you think people would learn. Should we start making up banners? Should have read the book first? That's just too evil, isn't it? Pocket handkerchiefs! I was so disappointed when Bilbo set off on his adventure with absolutely no mention of pocket handkerchiefs. It's funny how you can associate so much about a book with such a small scene. And then, he stops in the middle of the road and declares, "Nope, we've got to go back. I forgot my pocket handkerchief." Oh, my little fangirl heart nearly fainted with pleasure. There were just so many little things like that. The reference to Bull Roarer and how he won the battle and invented golf at the same time. Thorin saying, "Out of the frying pan and into the fire." Such simple little statements, but they bring about a mind-blowing realism to fans like me, squealing in delight. They actually said that. Initially, I was annoyed that Bilbo was the one to stall the trolls until daylight because, in the book, it was Gandalf. That part of my soul that insists on perfection cried out, "Why? Why did you change it?" And then it became obvious. In the book, this was only the beginning of the journey, and Bilbo was supposed to be way out of his depth. But we were already halfway through the movie, and it was time Bilbo proved himself to the dwarves. It was a magnificent piece of character development, and it was oh so Hobbitish. And then there comes that moment when you realize that all you have been led to believe, all you have been tricked into caring so much about up to this point, really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Forget reclaiming Erebor, let Smaug run free, hang the dwarves. Just save that little hedgehog. Poor Sebastian and Radagast, my heart nearly broke. I started to tear up over the inevitable demise of that little hedgehog. What's a Thorin? Who's Fili and Kili? Their fates become suddenly meaningless as the last breath rattles out of that little hedgehog. Jackson Heartwrencher, don't you dare kill that poor little innocent animal. I loved how the dwarves are portrayed as rowdy and gruff because I honestly hadn't given it much thought, the major characteristics between the different species, especially when they were eating in Rivendell. Where's the meat? I don't like green food. The riddles in the dark scene with Gollum was just awesome. You know, it was everything you wanted it to be, with one exception. I know fitting in all of the riddles is a lot to ask for, and I wasn't really expecting them to. It would just take up too much time for the movie. But that they really have to cut the last one in half? I cannot tell you how irked I was that Gollum didn't use the whole time riddle. Gnaws iron, bites steel, grounds hard stone to meal, slays king, ruins town, and beats high mountain down. I know, time constraints, long riddle, but they started it, and it's one of my favorites, so it was blatantly obvious that they didn't finish it. Gollum was done, and I was saying, wait, there's more! Slay the king! Slay the king! On the whole, this was the only thing that disappointed me about the movie, and the rest of the film more than made up for it, so that's nothing to sneeze at. Plus, I'm still holding out hope for an extended edition. What I love most about Jackson's work on these movie adaptations is that it's so obvious he is such a huge fan of the books. Even with just the final scene, the thrush flies to the mountain, picks up a snail shell, bangs it against the wall, and the camera works its way in over the piles of gold to reveal the awakening of Smaug. Now, to anyone who hasn't read the book, this is a great cinematic way to connect the dwarves with the dragon at the end of their journey. It's creative and interesting, but those of us who read the book are cackling in delight because we get the reference. We see the hint because we know that that thrush and his snail are the reason Bilbo figures out the secret door at the end. It's another one of those memorable scenes that we associate so much with, and here it is. Early, and we get all giddy because we realize we've just watched the amazing first installment of The Hobbit, and the next one is going to be just as good. Okay, for anyone who didn't like the movie because of the inclusion of Azog the Defiler, shame. He may not have been Thorin's adversary in the books, even if he is a canon character, but he added a great sense of suspense to the story, not to mention a terrific method for some more character development. I just rewatched the movie, and I was struck by how seamlessly Azog was fit into the storyline. I mean, he's the reason that they wind up in Rivendell. He's linked with their capture by the Goblin King, and you just know he's going to be the one leading the evil armies at the very end. Azog is a huge bonus for the audience, and he also provides a physical antagonist for the dwarves, because, let's face it, without Azog, the first movie wouldn't have been nearly as exciting. That wraps it up for this Geek Fest. Of course, I can't wait for the next movie and an actual look at the dragon Smaug in his entirety, not to mention hear his voice. Come on. At the very end, as the piles of gold are shifting and Smaug rears his head, don't tell me I was the only one in the audience hoping for just one word. Say it, just one word. I don't even care what word it is. Just let me hear the melodious sound of your voice. Until this December, I definitely recommend that you read, hopefully reread, The Hobbit, but also the Silmarillion. Most of the Radagast scenes, the Necromancer, the Council of the Wizards and the Elves in Rivendell was pulled straight from its pages. If you find you can't make it through the entire book, at least read the last section of The Rings of Power and the Third Age, because it's mostly what this movie is dealing with, and it's going to be some good information to know on the next movies, I guarantee it. Now, I will leave you with this link, because it is a brilliant trailer, and I am still in utter awe at how they managed to so easily, completely capture not only the essence of the film, but also of our beloved Bilbo Baggins. Until the next Geek Fest, this has been a book-to-movie comparison with your lovable host, Amanda.